Hello everyone out there in the world of crochet. This is Mama Yours Creations, where we will learn all the stitches necessary to crochet. I will be doing a video series on the most basic crochet stitches, including the single crochet, the half double crochet, the double crochet, and the treble crochet, as well as how to do a slip knot, how to do a chain stitch, and how to do a slip stitch. And we'll also get into some of the more challenging ones as we go. But all the series will build on each other. So we're going to start with the most basic, which would be the slip knot, the chain, and the slip stitch. And we'll move up to half double crochet, to single crochet, then half double crochet, and double crochet, and triple crochet. All of that may sound like a lot right now, but trust me, we'll go very slow. We'll make it make sense so that even the most novice crocheter or the person that doesn't know how to crochet at all will be able to at the end of this series. Well, I hope you enjoy. See you soon. Alright, so we have here our yarn, and let's just break down this ball of yarn real quick. So we have the long end of the yarn that comes out of the yarn ball. This will be called our working yarn because it is the yarn that we'll be working from. And on the other end, we have the end of the yarn, and once we make our slip knot, this will make more sense, but this is going to be considered the tail of the yarn because it's the piece that ends. If we were to try and work this from here over, our work would be very short because it would just end because there's nowhere else for us to go. Oops. So let's get started with our slip knot. This is the loop, the first loop that we put on our hook, and we have to make a knot to keep the loop together. So the way I do it is I hold the tail on the right side, and I hold the working yarn on the left side, and I twist the two pieces of yarn so that this end ends up laying on top of this end. So let's show that. So holding the two, still got my tail over here and my working yarn over here. We're just going to hold them both in this hand or between these two fingers, and I'm just going to twist it so that now my tail is over my working yarn. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this loop so that it lays on the working yarn. So we're just going to lay it down just like that on top of the working yarn. And you want to make sure you use the working yarn and not the tail, because otherwise it'll slip in the wrong direction. And then you can see the working yarn is laying there between the loop. All we're going to do is reach in. We're going to grab that working yarn through the loop. We're going to use our tail to pull the knot tight. So let's do that one more time. We have our tail on this end, the working yarn's on this end. We grab the two together, we twist, we lay down over the working yarn, not the tail, and then we just use our fingers to grab the working yarn and pull the tail to close the knot. And then all we do is we take our hook, which this is a 5.5mm hook or a size I9. We stick the loop on our hook and we take this working part of the yarn and we pull it, and it closes our loop up. Now, I know I just pulled it tight, but you want to leave a little bit of space on the hook so that it's not too tight of a stitch to work in. Now this stitch, or this loop, this tail of our yarn, we're going to kind of forget about. I used a little bit in terms of pulling on it to loosen stuff up, but in terms of actually crocheting, we're not going to mess with it anymore. We're going to take our working yarn, which again is the yarn that's coming out of our ball, and I wrap it around my hand to just use my fingers to adjust tension. So I just wrap it around my pinky, and then I grab it with these two fingers and I stick this finger underneath so that the yarn's laying on top of my fingers and under these fingers and on top of this one. So now my pinky adjusts so that the tension isn't too tight. So let's do that again. Wrap it around the pinky, and then you grab it with these fingers and stick it here. Another way you can do it too is to weave it through those fingers. So what we're going to do is we're going to make our chain. Now the chain stitch is useful for building the foundation of our stitches, and that helps us have something to work into when we're actually doing the other stitches. So what we do is we yarn over, and yarn over is a term used in crochet that means you take the working yarn to behind your hook and you lay it on top across your hook so that you form what will be a loop. And you're going to use this hook part of your yarn to catch that yarn so that it doesn't fall off the hook. You're going to take, this is the part where I use the tail, you're going to take this loop that's still on your hook and you're going to slide it off. That's a chain 1. The loop that's on your hook does not count. You only count the ones that are off the hook. So right now we have 1 chain. So let's do that again. We go from back, we cross in front, we grab onto this chain, and we slide the loop off the hook. So now we have a chain 2. Let's get a little closer so you can see. And they kind of form, if my camera will focus, they form little V's. Okay, let's do another one. Back to front and slide off. Back to front, slide the loop off. So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4 chains, and we're going to chain 10 to start off. So we have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, oops, my yarn got a little splitty, let's try that again. 9, 10. So now we have a chain of 10. So when we begin working our rows, we're going to work back across this chain to make our row 1. So the first stitch I want to show you is called the slip stitch. It's a very short stitch that is used for moving the hook without cutting the yarn. It also is used to join 2 pieces of crochet together. So for instance, I could take this chain that we just crocheted and make it into a ring using the slip stitch. And how I would do that is I would go back to the very first stitch the very first chain we made, which is this one down here at the very bottom. I'm going to insert my hook into that stitch. I'm going to take my working yarn, which fell off my fingers. Hang on a second. Get that tail out of the way. Take my working yarn. I'm going to yarn over from back to front, and then I'm going to pull. You have 2 loops. Oh, my hook, I went under the 2 loops under the chain, but you could have gone under 1. It doesn't really matter. So this is considered 1 loop, and this is the second loop, the original loop that was on the hook. This is the one I went into. We're going to pull it through this chain, and as well as this loop that's on the hook. And that's our slip stitch. So in crochet instructions it would say join with a slip stitch to form a ring, and that's what we just did. We joined to make a ring. And then from here we would work into this, either into the chains themselves or just into the circle space. Another way you can use the slip stitch is, like I said, to move the hook without cutting the yarn. The slip stitch doesn't take up any height on our rows, so you insert your hook, and for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to show you. So I still have chain 10, but this 10th one got a little tiny, so I redid it. So we're going to skip this very first chain that is next to the hook. Remember, we don't count the one that's on the hook, and the one right next to it we're going to skip, and we're going to go into the second chain. We're just going to insert our hook. You can either insert it under the top part of the V, or if you turn it over, you see these little bumps. You can insert it under the bumps, or you can insert it under both of those. I'm going to just go under the top part of the V, so there's just one strand on my hook. You yarn over from back to front. You go through the chain that you inserted your hook into, and you go through the loop that was already on your hook. That's your slip stitch. Again, you go into the chain, yarn over, back through the chain, back through the loop on your hook. And what it does, well, let me work a couple more before I show you what that looks like. Alright, so what it does is it just lays those V's, as I've been calling it, at the front of the work so that it doesn't build up this way. It just runs along the front of the work so that you don't get any height, but you move the hook. Because if you didn't use the slip stitch, what you'd have to do is you'd have to cut your yarn on this end and then move the hook over and then slip stitch right here to start working from wherever you need to start. So that's another usefulness of the slip stitch as well, is if you do have to, say, join a new color at the end of the row, you can slip stitch to join that new color. Or not the end of the row, at the middle of a row. Alright, so there's the slip knot, the chain, and the slip stitch. We will be using them a lot. So if there's any confusion or any questions, please let me know, and I will try and clarify those to make them make more sense. And I hope to see you or hear from you for the next video, which will be single crochet. Bye.